You're listening to the Broken Havoc podcast on YouTube, where we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the frickin' referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications.
What's up, everybody? It is Broken Havoc here, right here on the Broken Havoc podcast, here to review Monday Night Raw from May 16th, 2022. Overall thoughts on the show. Honestly, to be quite honest with you, I didn't really care as much about what happened on the show. To be real with you, honestly, nobody was really talking about Raw after the events that unfolded behind the scenes. And if you guys do not know, Sasha Banks and Naomi have walked out. I believe it was during the show, so that is a big story, and everybody is talking about that story. Nobody's really talking about Raw, but I kind of felt bad that I didn't come with you guys with a Raw review, so I wanted to give you guys the Raw review. Also, my thoughts on the whole Sasha Banks and Naomi situation. So we got a lot of things to talk about right here on the show, but before I get on with all of this craziness, make sure to like and subscribe to the Broken Havoc podcast right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the frickin' referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Also, the Broken Havoc podcast is now available on audio platforms. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and Google Podcasts. So if you guys want to check out the Broken Havoc podcast on audio platforms, it's available on those platforms as listed. All right, let's talk about this whole Sasha Banks and Naomi fiasco that's going on, man, because this whole situation is absolutely blowing up like crazy. If you guys do not know, Sasha Banks and Naomi have walked out of the WWE for creative differences and for many other different reasons. But the original plan for the main event of this week's Raw was a six-pack challenge between Sasha Banks, Naomi, Nikki ASH, Doudrop, Asuka, and Becky Lynch. The winner would face Bianca Belair at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. So there were some issues going on there, in which basically the original plan was, what was it? Naomi pinned Sasha, and basically, Naomi would go on to face Bianca Belair, which would lead to Sasha Banks to win a number one contender spot against to be in a number one contender spot against Ronda Rousey, not against Ronda Rousey, but to win a match against Ronda Rousey. I believe it was at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, but there was problems there and there. But I'm gonna basically talk you guys on to basically tell you guys all the whole story about what happened. I'm reading this from Fansided. All the stuff that I'm reading from will be in the link in the description below. So according to Fightful Select, Banks had a meeting with Chairman Vince McMahon to voice her displeasure about the situation. Both were unwilling to budge on their respective stances. So after that, in regards to the six-pack challenge, Banks and Naomi were among Lynch, Asuka, Doudrop, Nikki ASH as competitors. In fact, Fightful Select reported that Naomi was supposed to actually win the match by pinning Nikki ASH. So those were actually one of the pitches for the match, setting up a title bout against champion Bianca Belair at the Hell in a Cell Premium live event on June 5th. Additionally, the outlet reported that the match was set up so Naomi and Banks would have no interaction with one another. So during this whole walkout, basically WWE put out a statement. Yes, they actually put out a statement, and they stated, and I quote, "When Sasha Banks and Naomi arrived at the arena this afternoon, they were informed of their participation in the main event of tonight's Monday Night Raw. During the broadcast, they walked into the WWE head of talent relations, John Laurinaitis' office, with their suitcases in hand, placed their tag team championship belts on their desk, and walked out. They claimed that they weren't respected enough as tag team champions, and even though they had 8 hours to rehearse and constructed their match, they claimed that they were uncomfortable in the ring with two of their opponents, even though they had matches with those individuals in the past with no consequence. Monday Night Raw is a scripted live TV show whose characters are expected to perform the requirements of their contract. We regret that we were unable to deliver as advertised tonight's main event." So, and that's end quote right there. So WWE put out a statement basically stating that, they had trouble with a couple of the competitors that they were participating in. They stated that they had 8 hours to rehearse. So that is craziness. Do I believe this statement? I don't, but let's continue on with the story. And then after I basically give you guys the whole story about what supposedly went down, I'll give you guys my thoughts on the whole situation and where I stand. So Fightful Select followed up after this statement, saying sources close to the situation stated that neither Banks or Naomi never claimed that they did not want to work with two specific competitors in the initial main event. The outlet said that they were informed that the champions were angling to have a match with Doudrop and Nikki ASH at Hell in a Cell, but that was turned down. In a separate report, Fightful Select states that the issue was related to the creative direction of the tag team championships, and the duo were quote unquote vocal about developing more stories within the tag team division. So basically their whole problem was, the direction of the women's tag team championship. So it really wasn't the creative direction of the 6-pack challenge. I mean, that plays in a factor. But really, the main issue out of this whole situation was the direction of the women's tag team championships. Also, there was follow-up reports on the latest episode of Wrestling Observer Radio. Dave Meltzer talked about how Naomi might be having issues with her new contract WWE is offering her. And this is a quote by Dave Meltzer, and I quote, "The deal is, and this was brought up to me as well, is that being Naomi's contract, I guess is expiring soon, but she will be in negotiations for a new deal. It's possible that they might go with the idea that she's not leaving, so no matter what, her family's here, and so they do not feel the leverage that they might have felt with Kevin Owens or Sami Zayn or someone where if we lowball them, they're going to leave, so we have to give them a pretty big offer." So again, that plays into a factor as well. And also, so really, there's a lot of different scenarios where this is going. A lot of people are saying this is contract issues. There are a lot of people are saying this is the whole, creative direction, which does play into a factor in this whole situation. But also, the direction of the women's tag team championships. Now, I'm going to give you guys my thoughts on what this whole, where I stand in this whole situation. People always tend to say, oh my God, Sasha Banks and Naomi are unprofessional and acting like crybabies. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion personally, Sasha Banks, and especially Sasha Banks. Sasha Banks, is that one woman in the locker room that honestly gives a damn about the women's division and the direction of the women's division. Not only that, Sasha Banks is somebody, and same as Naomi, but this was a situation in which Naomi was, basically, following Sasha Banks in this situation, but Naomi does have a point here as well, considering the fact that they are both tag team champions. But Sasha Banks is somebody that honestly cares about the women's division, but she is somebody that absolutely knows her worth. She can literally leave WWE today and still make millions of dollars in Hollywood. Hollywood is literally right in the corner for Sasha Banks. So Sasha Banks can literally go anywhere. But this is not a situation in which Sasha Banks is going to get fired. Like, I don't think WWE has the balls to fire Sasha Banks and Naomi. The reason why I say that is because of the fact that, number one, WWE cannot afford to lose somebody like Sasha Banks, and especially Naomi as well, considering the fact that Naomi is married with Jimmy Uso. And if WWE fires Jimmy Uso, then WWE is going to have to explain themselves to the Usos and Roman Reigns, considering she has connections with the family as well, considering she's married to one of the Usos. So that can be an issue that plays into a factor there. But again, in my opinion, I stand by Sasha Banks and Naomi because, people tend to call them unprofessional, right? But meanwhile, you had just last year, if you guys do not recall, you had Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair basically spewing their real life hatred on TV. If you guys do not recall, you guys remember that whole segment in which they had to swap the titles after the draft, and basically Becky was, she basically threw down the Charlotte's title, whatever. What happened there, that was a real life thing that actually happened. And it's crazy for me to say, but actually during that situation, Charlotte was actually in the right. But again, people say that, oh, they act unprofessional and they should have done what their contract stated. But again, in my opinion, I believe it's okay to people tend to say do what you're told, and that's fine. And I totally get it. I totally understand the point of, oh, you got to do what you're told. But especially with the caliber of Sasha Banks and Naomi, who have been with the company for years, and I'm talking about years, and Sasha Banks is making millions, ladies and gentlemen. Sasha Banks, I feel like she has every right to basically, question the creative process. That's just my opinion, because of the fact that how long she has been there, and she basically busted her ass to get where she is at. Not only that, I feel like Sasha Banks, again, she cares about the direction of the women's tag team championships. I feel like this is the problem with the entirety of the story. Again, there is nothing wrong with basically, having creative differences and saying, oh, this way works. But also, when it comes to Twitter, there's actually somebody close to Naomi and Sasha Banks on Twitter that was talking about the entire situation. And basically, I don't want to say giving Sasha Banks and Naomi's perspective, because again, what I'm going to be reading, you guys, take this with a grain of salt. Take this with a grain of salt. We do not know if this is true or not. But from the sounds of what we're reading from here, it does sound very true. But we're going to have to wait and see if this is actually true, because we got WWE's official side of the story. And in my opinion, I don't think WWE's official side of the story is true. I think they made some BS up. I don't think it was a situation in which Sasha Banks and Naomi were uncomfortable working with either Asuka, Becky Lynch, Doudrop, or Nikki ASH, because I believe they did work with them before. So why would they have problems with them working with them now? But this Twitter account named by Adidas_head88, who is a close friend of Naomi and Sasha Banks. Again, take this with a grain of salt. Everybody, take this with a grain of salt. But again, what I'm about to read to you guys, I mean, you guys possibly already know already, but again, this sounds very WWE-ish. That is just me. But he states, and I quote, "You are approached in February as being put in a tag team after both being promised big feuds at WrestleMania. You bite the bullet and you put everything you got into being a tag team. It works. You get over. You win the titles at WrestleMania and become merch pushers. 6 weeks into your reign, you show up to live TV and ready to work. You are told to be in the main event, and you are happy. You are both then told that one will be going over from pinning the other. You have questions why that decision was made and how it helps y'all. You request a meeting with your boss to discuss it. Your boss takes the meeting and everything is actually going well. He understands your concerns. The meeting ends well, and the match is told to be reconstructed. For some reason, producers get mad about it. You then ask one of your members, with one of your members going over what happens to your titles. You are basically told that you will just be carrying the belts. They want to use you both. They want to use you both to help put both women's champions to get more over. Neither one of you will win the solo titles, and you won't defend your tag titles until Money in the Bank. Which I'm gonna stop right there. If they're just carrying the titles, again, what is the point of the women's tag team championships? And this has been a problem since the inception of the women's tag team championships. And I constantly stated on here, on this channel, if you guys have been watching my reviews from my Raw and SmackDown reviews and WWE pay-per-view reviews, you guys know my stance on the women's tag team championships. The women's tag team championships mean absolutely nothing. They don't. You know, they're makeshift tag teams. And look, there's nothing wrong with the makeshift tag teams. Look, there's two ways that you can go when it comes to a makeshift tag team. And the right way is to have basically put two people together with background story. For example, Sasha Banks and Naomi make total sense because of the fact that they had a history in Team Bad. But Shayna Baszler and Natalya make no sense because of the fact that they just paired the two together for no apparent reason whatsoever. And that was the problem with the women's tag team championships. Like, everybody was cramming for the women's tag team championships to be introduced. Meanwhile, WWE does not have any actual women's tag team division. And one of the things I praise about AEW possibly bringing in trios championships is the fact that AEW is basically building up the foundation for their trios, because they got a lot of trios right there. They got the House of Black, they got Best Friends, they got a lot of trios in AEW, and they're setting the stage for future trios titles that apparently are already made. And with WWE, they did not have any women's tag teams officially made. They really didn't set the foundation for those women's tag team championships, to be quite honest with you. But continuing on with the story. After that, you were asked for another meeting with your boss, but this time you were being called spoiled. A producer walks away screaming. He comes back and tells both of you to fix your attitudes. Y'all have a brief meeting amongst yourselves and decide to stand up for yourselves. You go to another boss and you make it clear that you just have concerns. You ask why we are even in the match and why aren't other women in it. You ask why your titles have no stories for 2 months. Again, you are met with fix your attitudes. So after one final meeting with yourselves and asking others, you make the ultimate decision as a team. It's sad how the Onside is trying to create a fucked up narrative. Also, it was asked why were Nikki ASH and Doudrop in the match instead of starting their program tonight. Naomi nor Sasha talked down about being in the ring with either one. I don't know how that got flipped. End quote. So again, the statement that WWE put out that I read earlier on in this review, they stated that they had problems with one of the competitors. And this person is basically talking about specifically Nikki ASH and Doudrop. And he was basically stating that they basically wanted to set up a future program with Nikki ASH and Doudrop. Now, granted, look, they've been building up Nikki ASH and Doudrop as a tag team for like the past 2 weeks. Really, there was not a lot of building. I came on here and stated that it makes absolutely no sense because of the fact that they're just put together for no apparent reason whatsoever. Why of all things is Doudrop going to Nikki ASH? But with no tag team division, with no women's tag team division, what can you do? And the fact that this person, look again, I've stated, take this with a grain of salt, but this sounds very something that WWE would do because constantly, all the time, plans always change. And with Sasha and Naomi wanting to start a future program with them, I mean that is not a bad idea. Like in retrospect, creatively, it's kind of off. Because in a way, Doudrop and Nikki ASH together as a tag team make no sense. But if it's something for Sasha and Naomi to do and having a future program with the two, that is totally fine as well. And you know what? You got to respect not Nikki ASH. You got to respect Sasha Banks and Naomi for actually, caring about the direction of the women's tag team championships. And that was the main problem that they had. Apparently, that was the main problem that they had. So honestly, as of right now, I stand by Sasha Banks and Naomi for walking out. You can call it unprofessional all you want, but nobody was talking about that with Becky Lynch and Charlotte when they were basically throwing around the titles on live television on Fox, but nobody wants to talk about that. But again, Sasha Banks of all people, and Naomi as well, the fact that they were told apparently that they were, quote unquote spoiled. I mean, like, I'm sorry, but what has Sasha Banks been doing for the past couple of months? Really, she should be like up here instead of right here. And both Naomi and Sasha Banks are literally right here in the women's tag team division. They shouldn't even be a part of the women's tag team division. Like, after all, like, really, if you really think about it, they really shouldn't be part of that tag team championship scene. They should be put in the main event scene. I've been clamoring for months that Naomi should have joined the bloodline. How many years has it been that Naomi, and this is not Naomi's fault, Naomi is absolutely talented at what she does. I mean, how many years has Naomi used her babyface glow gimmick? She used it since 2016, 16, 17, 18, 19, 2020, almost 7 years that she has been using that gimmick. I mean, I think it's about time that we really need to reinvent Naomi. Let's be 100% real here. We need her to join the bloodline. It makes total sense in my opinion. Why don't they pull the trigger on it? In my view, I don't know why they've not pulled the trigger on it. Same as Sasha Banks. Sasha Banks should be put in a higher level. And the fact that one of the pitches apparently was Naomi pinning Sasha in this six-pack challenge, eventually having Naomi to go face Bianca Belair at Hell in a Cell, in which she would still lose as the women's tag team champion. I mean, that makes no total sense, considering the fact that both Naomi and Sasha just won their championships at WrestleMania just 1 month ago. And what have they been doing throughout the entirety of the whole month? Really, let's be honest, they haven't been doing nothing. They've been wrestling Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley. They've been going back, and they've been winning and losing back and forth on a constant basis. Let's be real here. So, like, throughout this past month, ever since they won the championships at WrestleMania, they haven't been doing anything. So, of course, Sasha and Naomi do have every right to be concerned. So, people can call them unprofessional all they want, but until we get, look, I'm still on Sasha and Naomi's side, but, like, look, we got WWE side of the story, which I think is pure BS, but we have to, and what I just read to you from this Twitter account, I mean, look, again, take that with a grain of salt. I mean, it does sound very accurate, but again, we have to hear from both Sasha and Naomi themselves, and we got to hear their perspective on the whole situation. And again, Sasha is somebody that actually cares about the direction of the women's division. Keep that in mind. And also, she is somebody that knows her worth, same as Naomi. Naomi, I guarantee you, cares about the direction of the women's division because she's been there for a long, long, long period of time. But again, is this a situation in which WWE is going to fire Sasha Banks and Naomi? Honestly, I do not know. I doubt it, considering the fact that WWE cannot afford to lose somebody like Sasha Banks and Naomi. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, they're not going to fire them. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, they're not. Don't start with these AEW rumors, okay? Don't put the All Elite. Like, I see people constantly putting the All Elite graphic for Sasha Banks and Naomi. People don't need to realize, but like AEW has their own problems with the women's division as well. And I'm AEW through and through, and I constantly, right here on this channel, I always say AEW is so much better creatively than the WWE. But let's be 100% honest here. AEW does have their problems with the women's division. I mean, like, my God, Thunder Rosa, what has Thunder Rosa been doing ever since she won the championship? She's been feuding with Nyla Rose, and she's going to be wrestling Serena Deeb, which is going to be a fantastic match at Double or Nothing. But let's be real here. Was there really that much build for Thunder Rosa and Serena Deeb? As much as I am excited for that match, was there really any build for that match? No, there really wasn't. So, again, take all of the stuff that you're hearing, especially from this Twitter account, with a grain of salt, even though, in a way, I kind of believe this story because it sounds like WWE would do something. We need to get more information out of this. And, again, I stand by Sasha and Naomi because, again, these are two women that actually know their worth and know that they can do more in the women's division. The fact that people are calling them spoiled and unprofessional, I mean, again, I'm going to compare this to the whole Becky Lynch and Charlotte situation in which they were throwing around their titles on live TV, but nobody wants to talk about that. All right. So that was my thoughts on the whole Sasha Banks and Naomi situation. Again, we need to get more information out of this. I don't think this whole situation is going to end anytime soon because I believe Brad Shepard also reported that that they have been pulled from live events, I believe, all the way till July. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was something that Brad Shepard reported as well. So again, many different scenarios here. This and another thing that I'm going to mention is this is no work. So, again, people tend to instantly think that this is a work and, but why did WWE put out a statement like this? I mean, yeah, they put out a statement like this, but they flat out even stated that Monday Night Raw is a scripted program. And also they called their championship titles belts, which is a no-no in WWE, which is really weird. So again, this whole thing is not a work. This whole thing is real as real can get, and this is a big story happening this weekend. Honestly, I do not know when it's going to end, but this is going to be a major story. But yeah, that was my thoughts on the whole Sasha Banks and Naomi thing. Now let's get on to Monday Night Raw. But again, before we get on with the whole review, make sure to like and subscribe to the Broken Havoc podcast right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the freaking referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Also, the Broken Havoc podcast is now available on audio platforms. It's available on Apple Podcast, Anchor, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. So if you guys want to check out the Broken Havoc podcast on audio platforms, it's available on those listed platforms that I have just mentioned. All right, let's talk about Raw. So what are my overall thoughts on Raw? Again, I mean, Raw was a fine show. I mean, was it an amazing show? No. Was it I don't want to say it was like terrible, but like, honestly, a lot of the stuff that happened on the show really is something that I just feel like, it was not, to me, it just didn't feel special. I feel like really the only special thing that happened on the show was the Cody Rhodes segment, and that Cody Rhodes segment was absolutely amazing in my view. And we already got a match booked for Hell in a Cell, and I definitely do see this being the main event, that being Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes 3 inside a Hell in a Cell, which is probably the first match we're going to be seeing Cody Rhodes bleed in, because you guys know how crazy Cody Rhodes is when it comes to blood. But also, I think this is definitely going to be a great match, and I definitely do see this being the main event of Hell in a Cell, considering the fact that Roman Reigns is not going to be a part of this show because he's going to be taking some time off, which, it's a good thing for Roman Reigns, but it's a detriment to the product itself, considering the fact that Roman Reigns is both WWE and Universal Champion. So Raw and SmackDown are not going to have a main champion, and that is a big problem. But let's talk about Raw. Raw starts off with Omos versus Bobby Lashley inside of a steel cage. MVP cuts a promo and welcomes the fans to Monday Night Raw. Tonight, they will witness a spectacle of destruction. He proceeds to basically run down Lashley verbally, and he proceeds to put over Omos. He expects that Lashley to put on one hell of a fight, but let's be real. This match is a far gone conclusion. Omos can win via pinfall or submission or escaping the cage. He's expecting that for Omos to brutalize Bobby Lashley worse than he did at Backlash, and states that the almighty era ends tonight. We are blessed to live in the age of Omos. And then Bobby Lashley proceeds to come out. But once Bobby Lashley is coming out from behind, Cedric Alexander proceeds to attack him. Then after that, both brawl on the outside, in which Omos leaves the cage and actually comes in and enters the fray. But referees and, guys that work behind the scenes try to separate them. Lashley goes back in the ring, and once we go to commercial break and once we're back from break, the match officially starts. So, Omos, overall thoughts on the steel cage match itself. Let's be real here. The only reason why the steel cage match is happening is because NBC Universal was complaining that Fox got a steel cage match with Sami Zayn and Drew McIntyre, which meant nothing, by the way, and they wanted a steel cage match of their own. A similar situation happened last year in which Fox got a Hell in a Cell match between Rey Mysterio and Roman Reigns, and then NBC Universal was crying and bitching and moaning about it, and basically they got a Hell in a Cell match between both Xavier Woods and Bobby Lashley. Now, I will say, that Hell in a Cell match between Xavier Woods and Bobby Lashley was absolutely fantastic. I absolutely loved that match, in my opinion. But again, it's basically a network thing, and that's basically the main reason why we got this whole steel cage match, in my view, at least. I mean, we've seen so many different instances like this. But Omos starts with a couple of shots to the back of Lashley. We got a running kick to the face of Lashley. At this point, Omos is in control. MVP pokes the eye of Lashley with the cane, and it's not the first time that actually happened in this match. Lashley proceeds to fight back. Omos is in control. Lashley applies a sleeper to the back of Omos, but then Lashley fights him off into the corner, but runs into the grip by Omos. We get an overhand shot by Omos taking down Lashley. MVP continues to interfere by poking the eye of Lashley through the cage with his cane, but then Omos proceeds to pick up Lashley, and then he takes him to the corner. Omos then hits a boot. Omos then goes for a splash into the corner. We get a back elbow by Omos into the corner. MVP then proceeds to slap Lashley around, so he's interfering in the match again. Lashley then grabs the arm of Lashley, but then Lashley proceeds to hit a spear on Omos. We get a cover, but Omos kicks out. Lashley goes for repeated elbows, and then he takes Omos down. He tries to apply the hurt lock, but then Omos tries to counter by sending Lashley from his back to the corner, but Lashley proceeds to escape. Lashley then goes for a boot. Then he tries to go up the cage, but then Omos catches Lashley. Then we get repeated stomps by Lashley, but then Cedric Alexander comes in and interferes by climbing up the cage to the outside, and he actually makes it all the way to the top, but then he gets thrown off the top by Bobby Lashley. Then Lashley tries to hit a crossbody, but then gets caught by Omos. He throws Lashley onto the cage, and then Lashley fights back with repeated rights. He runs into a boot by Omos, but then Omos takes Lashley. He proceeds to pick him up, and he throws Lashley through the cage onto the outside, but little does Omos know that Lashley actually gets out and actually proceeds to win the match, because since this is a steel cage match, you can end the match via pinfall, submission, or escaping the cage, which I think, even right now, after what we have seen in AEW, I feel like the whole escaping the cage concept is kind of dumb. Let's be 100% real here. I don't like the whole idea of escaping the cage, because like the whole point of a cage match is having two guys stay inside. Now, granted, in history of steel cage matches that have situations like this, yes, wrestlers can go to the outside, but like again, the whole escaping the cage concept is really dumb in my eyes, at least. But this whole thing, the finish, I don't want to say it was amazing. I mean, in a way, it kind of makes Omos look dumb. I'm going to be honest here. I think it kind of makes Omos look stupid because of the fact that he throws Lashley through the cage, but then Lashley actually goes to the outside. So he throws him basically outside, and Omos lost the match. So, I mean, that makes no sense. But you had the referee go to Mike Rome, who is the ring announcer, and says that Lashley officially won. I do not know why. Honestly, why did you have to go to the ring announcer to actually state that Bobby Lashley won the match? I mean, he escaped the cage by any means necessary, so he still won anyway. So why did you have to go talk to the ring announcer? To me, that was also a dumb idea. But At the end of the day, Lashley went over. Overall thoughts on the match. I thought it was a fine match. I mean, in a way, it got the job done. But do I still care about this whole feud between Bobby Lashley and Omos? I'm gonna be honest. I don't care about the feud whatsoever, in my opinion. I just don't. There's no reason for me to care. We got an advertised match that we did not get with Austin Theory taking on Mustafa Ali. Mustafa Ali recently came back, and again, I constantly say that WWE should have utilized on the Free Ali hashtag, but they did not do that. Theory gets the microphone and talked about how he almost forgot, and he can't, from good faith, can't figure out what makes him think this match is going to happen. Talks about how he needs someone to call this match right down the middle, and what happens? The Miz comes out for the second week in a row, and The Miz is the special guest referee. So this is for the second week in a row that Miz is the guest referee and basically screwing over Mustafa Ali. The match starts, and then Miz basically asks Ali if he's ready, and he asks Theory if he's ready, but Theory gets the microphone and says that he isn't his opponent. His opponent is Veer. So basically what he basically said is that, he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to teach you my first lesson that I learned from Mr. McMahon. Expect the unexpected. And basically talks about how his opponent is Veer. So we got, instead of getting Theory versus Ali, we got Mustafa Ali versus Veer. Overall thoughts, Ali did get some offense in this match, but he still lost, which, I mean, it's Veer, and they're building Veer up like crazy. But Ali hits a drop kick. We actually get multiple drop kicks by Ali. Veer then fires back with the body press. He throws Ali into the corner. Ali proceeds to escape. We get a chop by Ali, and we get repeated rights by Ali. We get a boot by Veer. Veer then plants Ali face first to the mat. Veer then goes for an elbow drop. He proceeds to pick up Ali, but then Ali escapes. He hits a super kick, that being Ali, and then he hits another super kick after that. But Theory interferes, but then Veer gets taken to the outside. Then Ali goes for a kick, but then Veer still lands on his feet. Miz then proceeds to block Ali, but then Miz shoves into the face. So what happens is Ali tries to go for I believe it looked like he tried to go for a suicide dive. And once he was running towards that possible suicide dive, Miz, who is the special guest referee, blocks him. So he blocks him, and basically Miz shoves the face of Ali, which leads to Veer hitting a clothesline on Ali, and he applies the cervical clutch. Ali proceeds to tap out, and Veer wins the match. After that, Theory takes a selfie with Veer, but then Veer goes to the table. But the Mysterios, Rey and Dominic Mysterio, come back for the save. Dominic then proceeds to hit a crossbody, but then gets caught, and Rey takes him out with a senton on Veer. Overall thoughts on this match? It was a fine little match. Ali lost again, which to me, Ali has been on a losing streak, and I don't think WWE has any real plans for Ali. Let's be honest. They barely have plans for anything. I feel like the only plan that they have is Cody Rhodes, which is totally, I definitely understand. If you're paying Cody Rhodes like $4 million, you better have some sort of plan for him, but they do have a plan for Cody Rhodes, but I don't think they have any sort of plan for Ali. And I don't want to be that type of person, but budget cuts are coming next. I feel like Ali is going to be one of those guys that are going to be part of the budget cut list. That is just me. I don't want to be that type of guy to say that, but I'm just telling the God's honest truth, because WWE loves their budget cuts. They just love that. All right. Becky Lynch is backstage with Adam Pearce, and she talks about how Sasha and Naomi left the building. That is not the first time that was mentioned on television. Also, Corey Graves mentioned on commentary that they basically unprofessionally walked out, which, people went on Corey Graves' ass for that, which, if you're blaming Corey Graves for saying that, you're full of shit, mainly because of the fact that I know for a fact that Corey Graves, 100% Vince McMahon told Corey Graves to say that. I don't think it was a situation in which Corey Graves was, angry as hell and all that stuff. But she talks about how Sasha and Naomi left the building, and, there should be a changing in the main event. And Adam Pearce states that it's official. It will be Asuka versus Becky in the main event, which, if you look at the original plans for the six-pack challenge, the whole idea of the six-pack challenge itself makes no sense. This is why. First off, you have Asuka and Becky Lynch, which make total sense, but the other four women in the match, Sasha Banks and Naomi, make absolutely no sense, and this is why. Yes, They are the women's tag team champions, and they can float between both shows. But also, Sasha Banks and Naomi are SmackDown talent. So why are they competing for a number one contenders match for the Raw Women's Championship? That makes absolutely no sense either. Also, why is Nikki ASH and Doudrop in the match? I mean, you just brought back Alexa Bliss, and you just had Rhea Ripley join Judgment Day. I understand that Rhea Ripley is currently, in a way, feuding with, Liv Morgan, but let's be real. I mean, you could have even added Liv Morgan in that match, but you didn't. They added Doudrop and Nikki ASH, and if this all connects to the perspective of Sasha and Naomi being angry about the direction of the women's tag team championships, considering the fact that they wanted to have a program with both Nikki ASH and Doudrop. That is just me. But we got Asuka versus Naomi in the main event. We got Jimmy Uso, one half of the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, taking on Riddle, one half of the Raw Tag Team Championships. As we all know, tonight on SmackDown, it's going to be finally a tag team unification match between RK Bro and the Usos, which I think will be a freaking banger of a match. But let's be 100% real here. The match is only going to be going two ways. Either the Usos officially unify both titles, or this match ends in a messed up finish in which it ends in a DQ, and basically we get, RK Bro versus the Usos inside Hell in a Cell for the Unified Tag Team Championships. Either one of those two ways it's going to go. Regardless, tonight on SmackDown, I think it's going to be a fantastic match, and I think this is one match that SmackDown really needs, because SmackDown has been god-awful for the past how many months? It's been absolutely atrocious. But what are my thoughts on Jimmy Uso versus Riddle? I mean, we've seen this match so many different times. And again, I just do not like the booking philosophy constantly, because we get this every week when it comes to tag teams. So like 1 week, for example, we got RK Bro versus Alpha Academy. So 1 week we got Randy Orton versus Chad Gable. And then the next week we got Randy Orton versus Otis. And then the next week we got Riddle versus Chad Gable. And then the next week we got Riddle versus Otis. It's repetitive stuff, and you see that constantly with WWE booking. And also that we've seen constant rematches. Like, people say, "Oh my God, why do people complain about WWE's rematches?" Yeah, because we see them all every freaking week. We see them every freaking week. Like, literally, like, I can recall like many other different episodes of Raw where like almost every single match was a rematch from a different week. Literally, it's a repetitive thing that bores the viewer, in my opinion. It bores the hell out of me, saying that we've seen the match already, so why are we seeing it again? When you watch AEW Dynamite, and yes, I'm going to compare them to AEW. I don't give a shit what anybody says. But when you watch AEW Dynamite, do you see constant rematches every week? You see something different every freaking week. The only times you see a rematch is when there's a story involved. But there's stories involved in WWE when it comes to the rematch. Bro, we see rematches almost every week that make no sense. Like, we see, like, for example, like, how many times we saw, like, Randy Orton versus, like, Chad Gable. Like, oh my God, the amount of times that we've seen those types of rematch, it's absolutely insane. But whatever. But we got Riddle versus Jimmy Uso, which was not a bad match. Jey Uso's on the outside, but he tries to interfere. But then Jimmy goes for repeated stomps. We get a chop by Jimmy Uso. We get a high kick by Riddle. Riddle then goes for a gut wrench, but then we get a cover and a near fall. We get a right hand by Jimmy Uso. At this point, Jimmy is in control. Jay then goes for a cheap shot from the outside. Riddle then counters Jimmy with a triangle off the top. We get a running kick by Riddle on Jey Uso. We get a right hand by Jimmy into the ring. Jimmy then goes for a suicide dive, sending Riddle, taking out Riddle. And then he proceeds to send Riddle to the steel steps. Once we're back from commercial break, we get a beautiful spinning enziguri by Jimmy Uso. We get a hip attack into the corner by Jimmy. We get a cover and a near fall. At this point, Jimmy is in control. Riddle then proceeds to fight back, and then we get an overhead kick by Riddle. Then we get a running forearm by Riddle, and then we get a suplex by Riddle. Jimmy then gets the knees up from the Broton attempt. Both then proceed to exchange shots. We get a pump-up Samoan drop by Jimmy Uso. We get a cover and a near fall. Then Jimmy goes to the top, but then Riddle comes in. He wants to hit the RKO, but then Jimmy hits a headbutt, taking out Riddle. Then Riddle counters the Uso splash when he gets the knees up. We get a back elbow by Riddle. Riddle then goes to the top, and then Riddle gets taken down by Jey Uso. We get a roll up by Jimmy, and then Jay helps Jimmy, but then the referee sees it. Then Jay gets kicked out from ringside. Then we get an inside cradle by Riddle, and Riddle gets the win, which definitely sees, possibly the possible scenario of the Usos winning the Raw Tag Team Championships on SmackDown tonight, which I think it's the right decision to make. It's either going to end in a DQ, or it's going to end with the Usos winning clean. We're going to have to wait and see, but either way, I think it's still going to be a banger of a match. That's literally the only thing that I'm hyped about when it comes to SmackDown. That's just me. We get a segment with Judgment Day, which I have been a fan of. I'm absolutely loving what Edge is doing with Judgment Day, and honestly, I do not mind if Edge wins the WWE Championship. Yes, I said it. I said it right here. It makes total sense if Edge ever won the WWE Championship, like Cody Rhodes. Whether you like it or not, it's going to happen, which I hope it does happen, because it makes total sense. If it doesn't happen, what is the point of you bringing Cody Rhodes into the WWE? But 100%, Cody Rhodes, after his feud with Seth Rollins is done, he is going to enter either with a feud with someone like Randy Orton, or he's going to be entering into a feud, for the WWE title. We're going to have to wait and see, because Roman is going to be losing those titles, I believe, by the end of this year, considering the fact that, he's most likely going to have his match with The Rock at WrestleMania. And that match is definitely going to happen. But again, if Cody Rhodes is ever the WWE champion, I feel like the guy to take the WWE title away from him is a guy like Edge. I mean, to me, I don't see it. I don't see the problem with it whatsoever. But all members of Judgment Day talk about their domination, and Edge talks about how he's tired of basically people pretending. Talks about how they are angry. Talks about how we should stop being sheep, and says their mission statement is Judgment Day equals power, and he asks us, the viewer, to claim it. And he says that more will join, and his arms are spread for any superstar to join the Judgment Day faction. It can even be AJ Styles. He tries to please everybody else, and he talks about how Edge tried to do the same thing, but it ended him into an early retirement. And then he talks about how Liv Morgan, Finn Balor, and AJ, the choice is theirs to join Judgment Day. So after this segment, I definitely do see, people think, oh, AJ Styles is going to join or Liv Morgan is going to join. I don't think AJ or Liv Morgan make any sense. I think it's definitely Finn Balor, considering the fact that WWE has been doing really nothing with Finn Balor, aside from putting the United States Championship on him, but he lost that to Austin Theory. Again, I see it being a situation in which it's a Bullet Club-like turn in which, Judgment Day surrounds the ring, and you have Finn Balor and AJ Styles both in the ring, but then Finn Balor basically just hits the overhead kick on AJ, and then, you have the entirety of Judgment Day just beating the shit out of AJ Styles. That's what I see happening. But again, I mean, I definitely do see somebody like Finn Balor joining Judgment Day, and I think it's the right move, in my opinion. So we got not Finn Balor versus AJ Styles. We got Finn Balor and AJ Styles versus Los Lotharios, which, why is Los Lotharios on Raw? It makes no sense, considering that those guys are a part of SmackDown. But AJ and Humberto both lock up. We get a chop by AJ. At this point, AJ is in control. Then Balor tags in. We get a double team attempt by AJ and Finn. We get a cover by Finn and a near fall after that. Then Garza makes the tag. We get a double team by Los Lotharios. Humberto then makes the tag. He is the legal man. We get a double suplex attempt by both Humberto and Garza. Then AJ escapes and fights back. Finn and AJ with the double clothesline taking out both members of Los Lotharios, so they got great double team maneuvers during this match. Then they both hit a double crossbody over the top rope onto the outside. Once we're back from break, Humberto is in control. Then they both apply a single leg. He applies a single leg Boston Crab. Garza makes the tag. He proceeds to hit the basement drop kick. And then after that, Styles goes for an enziguri. Finn makes the tag. He takes out Garza and then hits a double stomp on Humberto. We get a chop on Garza. We get a Russian leg sweep by Balor. Then we get a running kick by Balor, and then Garza goes for the inside cradle, but we get a kick out. Then we get a knee by Garza. Garza then tries to hit the wing clipper, but then Balor proceeds to hit the sling blade. runs into a super kick. Humberto makes the tag, and then he goes to the top, and then he misses a moonsault when Balor hits a kick to the face. We get a shotgun dropkick on Humberto, and then Styles hits the phenomenal forearm, but then Balor hits the coup de grace on Humberto, and we get a cover, and the babyfaces get the win. Overall thoughts, it was a great little match. Again, it makes no sense of why Humberto are a part of this match, but whatever. AJ and Finn are a great team together, as well as Liv Morgan being a part of it. The reason why they're teamed together for a temporary basis is because of the fact that they're currently feuding with Judgment Day. But again, I do see somebody like Finn Balor eventually turning on them and joining the group. And they also do the too sweet hand gesture in the end. Alpha Academy are backstage with Kevin Owens. Gable has the DNA lie detector. And then the DNA results were contaminated by barbecue sauce. Kevin Owens gets pissed and he accuses Otis, which was hilarious. And then Gable wants to do an ancestry test. We got Alexa Bliss versus Sonya Deville in a rematch. Don't be surprised if we get another match this coming Monday on Raw with Alexa Bliss and Sonya Deville. But of course, Alexa Bliss made a return as the goddess. But she still came out with Lily, and she basically beat Sonya Deville, in which Sonya Deville lost her power, her official power. So like she's no longer an official, she's just a competitor. But the match starts, both lock up. Sonya then shows the face of Alexa. We get a slap by Alexa, we get a shoulder tackle and a drop kick by Bliss. Then she takes down Sonya. Bliss then goes for the knee. Then Bliss misses a standing moonsault. We get a running kick by Sonya. We get a cover and a near fall. We get a right hand by Sonya, but then Bliss escapes. Then we get a couple of knees by Sonya. We get a running kick by Sonya, and then we get a cover and a near fall. She proceeds to expose the turnbuckle pad. She then hits the spine buster when the ref was fixing the pad. We get a cover and a near fall. Bliss then fights back, and then she drops Sonya head first. We get a cover, and Bliss wins the match. After that, Sonya Deville is so pissed off that she's arguing with the referee and actually slaps the referee into the face. So you definitely will see a fine in kayfabe with that. We get a segment with Cody Rhodes, which was absolutely awesome. If you guys are saying that Cody Rhodes is being underutilized in WWE, I have no idea what the hell you are watching, because ever since Cody Rhodes has came into the WWE, he has been booked perfectly. I don't care what anybody says. You know, I support AEW through and through, but again, WWE, I got to give them credit. They are booking Cody Rhodes absolutely perfectly, and 100% the guy is going to be WWE champion by the end of the year. All right, so he cuts a promo and talks about how he was told that Seth Rollins is not in the building. And although he is surrounded by the lovers in Virginia and millions watching all around the world, he hopes that Seth Rollins is listening, and says that last week he tried to move forward. He talks about how he stomped his head onto the announce table. He has to know what is it that he took away from Seth. He talks about, did I take away 2 matches? A winning bonus? Yes, he actually mentioned a winning bonus, which is actually really good, especially by Cody Rhodes. He says that the biggest threat to Seth Rollins is not him. It's Seth Rollins himself. And he talks about us taking a little stroll back in time to 2012. Seth Rollins officially joins WWE. He talks about he himself was bitter, that being Cody Rhodes, and talks about how he had goals and says that he won his way to the top. But his story, that being Cody Rhodes, is a little different. He didn't win. No, he actually lost. He scratched and clawed and actually painted his face. And he endured it. You learn so much from your loss. You learn how to reinvent yourself. And the number one thing he learned, he's never going to be the American dream, so why not embrace the nightmare? He can scratch. He said he thought he lost his way to the top, but the Seth Rollins' embarrassment outweighs his quest for vindication. He has a second chance. You don't take it for granted. And says that, Seth, you are going to have to kill him. And says that he will give him a chance and they will run it back. They took all the anger and they look at all of the anger that is built inside and they will leave it to the mat. Rollins versus Rhodes 3, but this time it will be inside Hell in a Cell. At this point, you hear Rollins' voice laughing backstage, in which earlier in the promo, you had Cody Rhodes basically state that he is not in the building, but clearly Seth Rollins is backstage. But Rollins is on the Titantron. It says that he wanted to steal a spotlight at WrestleMania, cheating to beat him at WrestleMania Backlash, but that wasn't enough. Now he is begging for one more go-around, and this time is inside Hell in the Cell. It says that Cody must be stupider than he looks. He knows his answer, and he will exploit everyone, all of his insecurities, and will expose him for the fraud that he is. And Rollins versus Rhodes 3, Rollins accept, and then Cody in his closing line tells Rollins that he will see him in hell. Which we got Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins 3. Again, I predicted that this was going to be a trilogy, and I was right. And honestly, I'm actually really happy that that is the case, considering the fact that Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes, they both had banger of a matches. I mean, their match at WrestleMania was by far the best match of the entirety of both nights, in my opinion. Mainly because of the fact that it was Cody Rhodes' debut, but it was absolutely fantastic and amazing. But also their match at WrestleMania Backlash, which was the opening match, was absolutely amazing as well. And it's really hard, and I stated this on my WrestleMania Backlash review, it's really hard to compare both matches. Considering the fact that both were just so damn good, it's really hard to compare. But I feel like their third match is actually possibly going to be their best match, considering it's going to be inside Hell in a Cell, and I'm definitely excited to see where this goes. So this is definitely going to be the last match for the foreseeable future, but honestly, man, I'm definitely excited, and this is definitely going to be the main event of the next pay-per-view, which is Hell in a Cell, which is going to be taking place in the beginning of June. So again, this is going to be the main event since Roman Reigns is going to be taking time off. This is not a bad replacement. Honestly, Cody Rhodes should be in the main event, and honestly, I'm happy about that. We get Elias's younger brother, Ezekiel, versus Chad Gable in a good match. It was not a bad match. Both lock up. We get a waist lock by Gable. Ezekiel misses a back elbow. We get a flying shoulder tackle by Ezekiel. Gable then targets the arm of Ezekiel. We get a side headlock takeover by Ezekiel. Then we get a side headlock by Ezekiel. Then we get a side slam by Gable. He runs the knee on Ezekiel, and then we get a cover and a 1 count. Ezekiel then picks up Gable from the back, and then he tries to apply somewhat of a Romero special onto the back of Ezekiel. But then Gable goes for the roll-up, but then Ezekiel catches Gable. Ezekiel then goes to the outside, and then he drives the head of Gable onto the apron. Then he basically throws him down throat first to the top rope. Then the referee checks on Gable. Otis then proceeds to interfere on Ezekiel when the referee is not looking. Then after that, once we're back from commercial break, Gable is in control. We get a Northern Light suplex by Chad Gable, and then we get a near fall. He works on the left arm of Ezekiel, and then we get a German suplex by Gable. We get a cover and a near fall. Gable then goes to the top, and then he proceeds to miss a moonsault. Then Gable runs into a clothesline. We get a kick by Ezekiel, and then he proceeds to hit a beautiful spine buster after that. We get another cover and a kick out. Ezekiel then takes Gable to the top, and then he proceeds to hit a chop. Ezekiel then goes to the top, and then Gable takes him down. Gable then drops but falls into a knee. He proceeds to pick up Gable, but then Gable escapes. Then we get a shoulder tackle, but then Gable goes to the top. He proceeds to hit a moonsault, but then we get a cover and a near fall again. We get repeated rights by Chad Gable, but then Ezekiel fights back. Ezekiel then takes Gable out. We get a splash into the corner. Then Ezekiel takes out Otis. We got a roll-up by Gable, but then Ezekiel escapes. Then after that, Ezekiel goes for the roll-up, and then Ezekiel gets the win. So overall thoughts, it was a fine little match. This whole Ezekiel thing, even though it is stupid, the fact that Kevin Owens is involved, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty much entertained by it. Kevin Owens makes... Look, Kevin Owens is that one wrestler that makes... He basically takes something... It takes a concept that is actually, like, really dumb, and just by his mannerisms and the way he speaks, he just makes him really fun to watch. We get a Lacey Evans segment in which why is she officially part of the Raw roster if we have been seeing constant vignettes of Lacey Evans on SmackDown, but now she's officially a part of the Raw roster. And also that there was also rumors that she was going to be coming in as a heel, which to me makes absolutely no sense. But she basically talks about how she admires and respects the men and women of armed forces. She wants everyone to get up on her feet and give a round of applause. We get a bunch of USA chants all around the Norfolk scope. Then she puts over the crowd. Then she's in the presence of the services of men and women, and she finds the courage to fight is hard, and we have to do what it takes to do so, and she is thankful to be on Raw. So, do I care? I don't want to be that disrespectful, but no, I just don't. We got Asuka versus Becky Lynch in a number one contenders match. Again, originally it was supposed to be a six-pack challenge, but of course the plans changed due to the events that unfolded behind the scenes, or backstage, I should say, with Sasha and Naomi walking out. The match was fine. It went by really quick, let's be honest, and it was not really that special, but it was Asuka and Becky Lynch. And Asuka did go over, which I feel like was the right decision to make. We get a code breaker like move by Asuka. She gets taken to the apron. Becky then goes for a kick. Becky then gets taken to the apron, but then Asuka hits a hip attack from the outside. Both then at this point are on the outside. Becky catches Asuka and hits a fall-away slam onto the barricade. Once we're back from commercial break, Asuka then goes for a backslide pin attempt, and then she goes for a roll-up, but then we get a near fall. We get a kick by Asuka, but then Becky fights back. Both proceed to exchange shots. We get a spinning kick by Asuka, and then we get a knee by Asuka, and then she proceeds to hit a German suplex after that. Then we get a running knee by Asuka. We get a cover and a kick out. Then we get a roll-up by Becky Lynch. Then she tries to hit the manhandle slam, but Asuka counters. Then Asuka misses the hip attack once again. Becky then fights off Asuka, but then she hits a leg drop on Asuka. Then we get a cover and on by Becky and a near fall. Asuka then goes for the roll-up, but we get a near fall once again. We got a roll-up by Becky and another near fall. Becky then gets caught into the Asuka lock, but then Becky escapes. Then after that, Asuka's shoulders are down, but we get another near fall. We get a kick by Becky. Becky then goes to the top, and then she proceeds to miss the knee. Asuka then goes for the arm bar on Becky, but then Becky has her foot onto the rope. Becky then drives the neck of Asuka onto the top rope. Then Becky faces off with Bianca, who is on commentary, but then Asuka comes in. Becky then proceeds to drive Asuka on Bianca Belair. Then Becky then takes Asuka to the ring. Bianca then tries to enter the fray, but then Becky gets a weapon without the ref not looking. But then Asuka out of nowhere spits the green mist on Becky Lynch, and then what happens, we get a cover and Asuka wins the match. Overall thoughts, this was a fine little match, but you can tell they were trying to work the whole match like on the fly, considering all the stuff that has been happening with Sasha and Naomi, and basically all the plans were basically thrown out. But overall, it was a fine little match. Honestly, this is a match that I just didn't care about. But having Asuka face Bianca Belair at Hell in a Cell, I mean, is a fine decision for me. I mean, do I care? No, but I mean, it's Asuka we're talking about, and you know, it's great to see Asuka back. So you know, Asuka officially won. But yeah, that was my Raw review from May 16th, 2022. Overall thoughts on the show is it was a fun show for what it was. I mean, there's nothing really special that happened on the show. Really, the only thing that really interested me was the whole Cody Rhodes segment, because we got Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins 3 inside Hell in a Cell. But aside from that, really nothing special that really happened on the show. And honestly, I didn't care about a lot of the stuff that was happening on the show, mainly because of the fact that, you know, all the reports of Sasha and Naomi were going on, and really that's what everybody was talking about, not really the show itself. But yeah, that was my Raw review right here on the Broken Havoc podcast. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, and push that bell for notifications, and be on the lookout for more videos right here onto the Broken Havoc podcast. And as always, it is Broken Havoc signing out.